divided based on nucleic acid. We have RNA virus and we have a DNA viruses. In the RNA virus, our problems and our um, uh, the RNA viruses, they call it the king of mutations because most of the emerging viruses came from the RNA viruses. Why this has happened? Because it's related to the nature of the viruses. For example, let's make it in a very briefly. Mutation occur the viruses during the copy of the viral genome. During this process, the mutation is forming. So we have, for example, a DNA polymerase in the human. We got like the mutation rate. It's so very low. It's up to 10 power minus 9. But with the proofreading mechanism, this will be lower to 10 to power minus 11. For the RNA viruses and DNA viruses, we have a lower, but this is much lower, much higher in the RNA polymerase belong to RNA viruses. For example, the mutation rates is 10 to minus 4 in contrast with the DNA polymerase 10 to minus 7 or 6, and it could be lower to 10 to minus 9 by using a proofreading mechanism. So, what is the mutation? The type of mutation can occur to the viruses. We got like a point mutation, which can be done randomly during the copy of the genome, and we have a selective pressure due a mutation based on a selective pressure. This is usually when the virus try to inhibit the antibody response or resist to antiviral drug. Usually this is happen with the frequent with influenza viruses. A point mutation try to avoid to escape from the antibody response, so they try to make a mutation in order to inhibit the antibody response. And we can see it with the HIV virus. If the frequent doses of antiviral drug against the HIV, the virus try to form a mutation in order to resist the antiviral drug. Again, here we have the another a process of mutation, reassortment, and recombinations. Let's focus on reassortment. This reassortment happens only with a segmented virus, which is mere reassortment that we have an exchange the genome between the viruses. And got here like a picture just to simplify what's going on. For example, we have the classical, here the classical swine H1N1, and we have two human H3N2 influenza virus, and we have an avian. And we have here the mixing vessels or the intermediate vessel. What is the advantage of this intermediate vessel? Intermediate vessels, it's allow two different strains can get into the cell and replicate in one cell. So what is happening in this mixing vessel? Usually it's big. This intermediate host accept two different strains and replicate inside one cells. And as we see here in the middle, that H3N1 and H1N1, they replicate, and then after that, they mutate and form a human H1N1, which is totally a new virus able to adapt a human transmission and then have a sustained transmission from human to human. If we can see the timeline, this is it will take like 10 years. For example, starting in 1990, then 2000, then we have the 2009 H1N1. Again, the other things, it's a recombination, insertion of the fragment of genes between two different viruses. Here, just to simplify, we have like a strain A and a strain B. This is a nucleic acid, viral nucleic acid. This is the intermediate host who can accept both strain. They are replicating, and then we have a recombinant virion, which is a fragment insertion fragment, as we can see here with the purple color and green color. So this is the fragment, and we have like, sometimes it's gonna be recombinant, that two different strains or intra, that the recombination happened within the same strain. So this is how do the viruses mutate. Here is the picture that say that we got, like, for example, the viruses, for example, here is the wild animal cases, and they spill over the interspecies cross transmission to the domestic animal and spill over, transmit to the human being, and then the virus will evolve and transmit from human to human. So this is like a life cycle. We have a natural reservoir, and then we have an intermediate host, then the virus evolve, then transmit to the human. So the other things, globalization, the ease to travel. For example, if anyone in any airport, for example, in Heathrow Airport, and who sneeze and he's carrying a virus, and he was in any coffee shop, and they surrounded by 3 or 4 people, one will go to Tokyo, one to New York, one to Riyadh, so, or one to Sydney. They will spread the virus within less than 24 hours from continent to continent. Here is the airplane network. The world is connected less than 12 hours. That's why if you got like an emerging disease in any country away from you by 12 hours or by plane, just it's matter of time, the virus, it will reach to you. Climate change, I mean, climate change, not a climate variation. Here is when the alter the distribution, the epidemiological distribution of the vector, increase the opportunity for contact with the arthropod, bird, or rodent, or human, change the vector population density. We have like re-emerging such as Zika or dengue or chikungunya viruses. And here is like the war and forced displacement. As this is picture showing that we have in Syria, before the war in Syria in 2011, polymyelitis and the polio and measles and hepatitis E, as we can see, number. And after that, the cases start to be appeared. And also we can see the neighbor countries also they start to have some cases as well. So, and even in Yemen, in 2016, we have like a cholera re-emerging again. So the viruses can be emerge or re-emerge. It depends on many factors, and this is one of the major factors that make the virus emerge or re-emerge. So I will just go very briefly with the coronaviruses here. It is a RNA and envelope viruses. We got like now it was 6 known coronaviruses, and now it's a new guest coming to this family. It's SARS-2. Here is this is represent how the picture of the genetic makeup of the coronaviruses, but I will focus on the spike protein, because we will talk a lot about this glycoprotein in the next slide. So before I go to that, we need to know what is the relationship between bat and coronaviruses. It's very important to know that, because why this bat is a natural reservoir for the coronavirus. What is the advantage in the bat that make us a natural reservoir for the coronaviruses? So this is a published paper on 2006. It's they screen the coronaviruses in the bat, and they saw that there is a high diversity in the coronaviruses in the bat. One, this is related to the bat community, or to the different cell type in the bat. So what they figure out the astonishing diversity of the coronaviruses was observed in the bat. And the bat, for example, account for like 1,200 out of 4,800 mammalian species recorded in the world. And the bat provide a large, they have a large opportunity for the coronavirus, because they have like a large different cell type that make us the different coronaviruses lead to facilitate the adaptations and transmit to the other host through the interspecies transmission mechanism. Also, the habit of the bats, they figured they have the habit. They are roosting habit. When the bat, they are gathering with each close to each other. This is facilitate the coronavirus can jump from bat to other, from bat to another, and after that we might have a new viruses or new viruses that could adapt a human transmission or that could adapt the other animal transmission. So this is some facts about the bat. The bat have a large cell types that can allow the coronavirus to adapt or to bind into the cells, and then evolve in the another host and then transmit to the human. So here also the another published paper, the origin and evolution of the pathogenic coronaviruses. They figured that we have like a six. This is an article published before the SARS-2 was emerged. So we got like out of six coronaviruses, we can find that uh, the bat was the origin. The bat was the natural reservoir for the coronavirus who can cause a human disease. But we can figure here there is always an intermediate host. So the virus mutate and transmit to the adapt to the intermediate host, and then from the intermediate host can jump to the human. Uh, God made or man made. So let's back again to the beginning of the story. In 31 December 2009, as we know, there is a cluster of unusual pneumonia cases in Wuhan province in China linked to the Hunan seafood market. This is the seafood market. Again, most of them, they know this, or they figured it out. They thought the outbreak came up from this market. In the 7th of January, the Chinese scientists published there is a new virus and the novel coronavirus 2019. They said we have a new sequence, and we thought this is a new coronaviruses, and we have a limited information. And they shared the sequence with the other scientists after they downloaded and submitted in the gene bank. Just 1 month later, after a lot of research, they figured it out. This is viruses was already found to be related to the natural reservoir from the bat. Why? They do sequence analysis for the patients, and they found, and they link it or aligned to the other coronaviruses in the was found in the nature, for example. So they found that a strain is called bat-cov RATG13, and this strain actually was discovered in one of Yunnan province caves. And they found that this strains usually, when they study the sequencing analysis, this is it's like from 50 to at least 20 years old, this strain. I mean, the natural form of the SARS-2 was already found in the nature in one of the in the bats, and this is already analyzed in 2013 before it's emerged and adapt the human transmission. Again, of course, this is the most of the work was published in a very prestigious journal. It was published by Nature, and here again, this is confirmed. This is also a work was published by Nature. They say the SARS-CoV-2 is a product of natural evolution and is not lab created. It's all about how do the viruses survive and spread. In this article, what they have done actually, as we know, the length of the coronavirus it's like a 30,000 base pair, but they took only the spike protein. Why the spike protein? Because the S protein, it's play a major role and mediate the binding receptors, and also it play a major role in a humoral and cellular immune response. So they took this and try to um, to do a comparison between this virus and the available sequence in the gene bank. So they did a comparison between the human SARS-CoV-2 and the bat RATG13 that was discovered in one of the Yunnan cave, and the pangolin as well. And also they compare it with the SARS-1. Once they do this analysis, they found that the backbone structure of the spike, it was forming in a natural way, and there is resembling related viruses in the nature similar to this viruses found in the bat and the penguin. And they said, they conclude that this virus was in the nature, and it was the jump from bat to the intermediate host. They thought more likely it's a penguin, but has not been confirmed yet. And then jump to the human and adapt to human transmission, and might evolve in a human and have a sustained transmission from human to human. So the SARS most likely originated in a bat through the recombination of the bat-COVID. Recombination likely occurred in the bat before the SARS-2 was introduced in the human. First, they go into intermediate host and then jump to the human. Summary. This is my last. Yeah. Virus is not lab created. Okay, there is some speculation the virus escaped, but it has not been confirmed yet. We need to understand now how do the virus interact with the host. The constant spillover from the virus is a natural to the animal due to the human activity, as I explained. Viruses never mutate beyond what really it is. We never can see that the virus mutate the orthomyxovirus, which is as influenza mutate to be a coronavirus, or a coronavirus mutate to be another family virus. And thank you for your listening. This is virus mutation is anything.
Thank you very much for the depth of the virology, I will say it. I have actually more than 100 questions. I'm picking most of the important ones. Let's start with Dr. Muhammad. I just want to divide the questions for you, Doctor, in two parts: healthcare providers and the public.
Now, let's talk. Excuse me? Do we have publics? I said, do we have publics or just healthcare providers?
No, I'm receiving questions about how the public are involved. The questions related, let's say first, the healthcare providers. Most of these questions are coming from nurses. And the first question, is it a must to wear? We know that PPE is a must when you have a case infected and confirmed, asymptomatic. But what about, because you have said that the aerosols and it can be spread all over the hospital, somebody who is a carrier and not yet confirmed, when he walks in the hospital as a patient, he can spread the virus all over. The question was, is it a must to wear PPE in the hospital, or is it enough to wear the yellow gowns and the normal mask, the surgical mask in the hospital?
Okay, surgical mask is enough to be worn when you walk in the hospital, especially in clinical areas. So if you want to go to your office, you just sit alone, for example, for your break, or you want to search the net, or you just alone take a little break, that will be fine. You don't have to wear anything. But inside the hospital, you just have to keep the mask on. PPE, complete PPE, when you have a contact with patients. So you don't wear your
suspected patient.
No, sorry?
Yani not yet confirmed patients.
Yeah, but when you have any contact with anyone in the hospital that might be a patient, or if you have any direct contact, but you have to keep the mask on. But confirmed patient, when you with he's a patient, when you have any procedure, you have to put your PPE on based on the procedure that you're doing.
No, the question is, these patients in between, they have been admitted to the hospital as isolated patients, but their lab did not yet confirm the corona positive.
Yeah,
Do
we
you
have to
have to
consider,
wear PPE or mask?
when we deal with them, we have to consider every patient is positive until proved otherwise.
Okay, okay. Now, what about gloves? The next question was gloves. Do you have to wear gloves for the staff in the hospitals?
No, actually, you just have to wear gloves when you have any procedure. You have to deal with the patient,
Oh, sure.
but inside the hospital, you should not, because you can actually clean your hands better without gloves. Okay, so you can clean your hands as much as you can when you don't have gloves, but you're putting gloves on. You can just actually walk around with your gloves and touch different places, and you can pick up anything on your gloves and then spread it. So hands is much easier, and it's much easier to be cleaned as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions to Dr. Hatim. Why the difference between the infection rate between the countries? Yani we could see at the beginning the curve in China was picking up, and all of a sudden after few or 1 month, the curve was down almost zero now in China, where in Italy was so high, in Spain and Iran and in USA now coming in. Why is these differences in the curves in different countries?
Yes, of course. I guess this is well, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I can see that the early preventions and the early measures was taken by the other country who has lower infection rate. This is the major things. In case the Italy and the United States and the UK, they took their measures. They delayed when they took their measures. Actually, for example, once they start to take the lockdown, the virus was circulating like for 3 and 4 weeks in the United States and UK. So this is give big opportunity the virus to spread everywhere. So the lockdown was taken very lately. I mean, there was no early response at all. Even in the detection, the lab detection, they started very lately as well. While in the South Korea and in the Vietnam, totally different. They start to ban the travel. They close their border and they start to have a massive screening so they can detect a lot of cases and isolate. So the most equations for this is how to fast testing and then trace the contact and then isolate. The way the much you are fast, the much you are protecting your community.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Back to Dr. Muhammad. Now let's go to the public. You have as I said, the hospital staff, and now the public are more confused about how they. I have seen myself in my neighbors and my families panicking situations, panicking in terms that whatever grocery they bought, they have to spread it. They don't allow to take your shoes off. You have to take a shower when you come home. So how you would educate the public regarding this virus? How the public should react in this?
Well, I must say that the public actually taking it very extreme. Okay, for healthcare providers, when we come back home, it's better if we remove our clothes, take a shower, and before we get actually blended with the family. But about shopping, there is nothing confirmed that the shopping items, the grocery, will be a source of the virus. I know that there is some doctors who appear online making like a show how to split the grocery, which part is actually this bench, this part of the bench is contaminated, this part is clean, but be careful before you're transmitting. That is all just extreme things. There's nothing confirmed. Even the FDA in states, they did not publish any regulation about dealing with the grocery. If you want to feel safe, you can have any wipes, any type of wipes. Wipe your items when you bring it home, and get rid of the bags you brought from the grocery shop. That's it. This is the best you can do. The virus might be found on surfaces. I know that there's a study that said that the virus can stay on plastic for a few days, on carton for I don't know how many hours. That actually was experimental. That was done in a lab. So it was with a known concentration of the virus. And when you detect the RNA of the virus, it doesn't mean that you detect the live virus, which is transmissible. It can be just part of the virus, and it doesn't mean that it is a transmissible. Unless one who really positive and spit the virus on a surface, and then you came within minutes and touched that, that is a different story. But in general,
Yeah.
the grocery are safe, and they are not a source of the virus. Actually, social distancing is the most important thing when you go for shopping. Just make sure that you don't get close to anyone that beside you. You have to give a meter from each side, 1 meter in front, 1 meter at the back, 1 meter on the side, 1 meter on the left. So which means that you are walking in 2 by 2 meters, which is 4 meters, to give yourself enough space, safe space, if you like.
That leads to the next question directly. If life comes normal after the how the public should really act when if life comes normal? I mean, we could see now there is some loosening on the regulations, but yet not totally. The public still in the panic mood. How should they react when the COVID let's say scenario is over? Exactly. What is your recommendation, Dr. Mohammed?
Wallahi, as far as I know, it is getting over, inshallah, but it will happen step by step. It will not just like one day they will tell us we're free, you can go do whatever you used to do. No, it's not going to be like that. I think the whole world have changed, and it's still changing. Two things we have to do. For the time being, we have to keep the mask on. I am from the people who used to say that we should not wear mask unless you actually contact with patient. But now, since a lot of people actually carrying the virus without signs and symptoms, you want to make sure that you have to think that I'm positive. Everybody is positive. So we have to put the mask on whenever we contact, so none of us will actually get the other one exposed. So for the time being, we have to keep the mask on when we go out for places where there is actually people can actually gather, like mainly like shopping, grocery stores, like hypermarkets or pharmacies. These are the two main places people are going to. But if you actually going for doing some necessary shopping, still you have to keep the mask on when you contact with people. The second important thing, which is not less important than putting the mask on, is we have to keep alcohol gel with us in our bags, in our pockets, to decontaminate our hands frequently whenever we do anything outside the house. These two things, if we apply, inshallah, we will stay free until they say that we are actually going back to our previous life. We have to remember that the outbreak is still going on in the countries around us, so we still cannot really loosen it up very fast. We have to take it step by step and follow the regulation that actually come from the MOH.
Okay, Dr. Hatim, one more question for you. We could see the question is why these differences between the labs in China and in USA and in Europe? They have, most of these labs, they have their standards and they have their procedures, but the outcome of those three major lab areas are different. And we can hear that all the time, these differences between how we tackle this virus, the origin of the virus. So how could you explain to us this this statement?
Well, this is depends on many variation. I mean, it depends on the kit they are using, and it depends on the mutations that happen to the virus. It depends on the sample collection procedures. It depends on the quality of the material they are using. I mean, as you can say, there is a lot of sample they were found to be a false positive, and their sample were found to be a false negative sample, because you are in the beginning of this outbreak and you have not too much information. So this differences, usually it's normal to have it. But actually nowadays, most of the procedures are unified, and the target gene that we are targeting during the PCR diagnosis, it's already known. It's a very stable. We don't have any too much mutation on the primer sites for the for any lab diagnosis or any PCR diagnosis, especially because they are targeting three gene, the E gene and N gene, and receptors binding domain as well. So this genes most likely a very conserved spike gene is a conserved gene. For differences, this was in the beginning, and it depends also, as I said, to the clinical samples. This is the timing and the collections and the material you are using and the precaution you are using. This is affect the quality of the testing as well.
Okay. I have only two more questions, then we can close this. The question is for Dr. Muhammad again about, the question has two parts. One is, what about the effect of high temperature on the infection of the virus? And how frequent should I change the mask?
Okay. All right. So for the temperature, they're assuming there's a lot of studies about this. A lot of people say that it will decrease with the increase of the temperature. And with the final study that actually proved that with the sunlight, the virus will actually deteriorate and will die. But we have to remember that only when the surface is exposed to the UV light or the sunlight. So closed places still, if we do not do enough sanitization, the virus might actually stay. For outside areas, of course, when they get exposed to the sun, then the virus actually might die. That is the first part. The second part about how frequent, first of all, we have to, for the time being, when we deal with any patient in any ward, especially when you work in emergency department, you have actually to put your mask on. How frequent you change the mask? If you're doing a procedure, then you have to change the mask when you finish the procedure, because the risk of exposure is high. But if you're just dealing with the patient, just like taking temperature, giving medication, you just have to keep the mask on and change it frequently. If it became moist, if it become loose, if it has a cut, if there is a direct exposure, or then you have to change the mask. So based on the procedure, you have to keep every patient with his own PPE. But if you're just moving around for things that not very invasive, no close contact with the patient, keep it on. Usually it will take around 2 hours and then you need to change it.
Thank you. Last question, Dr. Hatim, for you. Is the virus being detected in China has been mutated or different than the virus in the States? Or is it the same?
Yeah, yes, actually, as a general, is the same virus, but sometimes the mutations, there is some mutation, but this is mutation in amino acid, not in the protein function, because usually virus mutate, and this mutation, you are addition some changes in the amino acid sequence. But we are do we have any change in the protein functions, make it more virulence or not? So the mutation exist because the virus is already, it's usually mutate, but usually this mutation never change the protein function. So changing in the amino acid, but not in the protein function.
What about the symptoms?
What about, sorry?
the symptoms. If it is mutated, can be changed in the symptoms?
Of course, if the it depends on the protein function. If the protein function is totally changed, we might see the severe symptoms. Or if the protein function could be changed in the way that is a mutation catastrophe, will make the virus totally inactive. As they thought that with the SARS one, they think that there is unusual mutation happening to the virus, make the virus disappear.
Okay.
But still now, the virus show the same 80%. They are mild, asymptomatic, and there is mild, and 14% or 15% they show some severe symptoms, and 5% who are in a critical situation.
Okay. At the end of this fruitful, informative session, I would like really to thank both our great speakers, Dr. Muhammad Halawani, Associate Professor in Infection Control, and Dr. Hatim Makhdoom, Assistant Professor in Clinical and Molecular Virology. And thank you for the participants, for your patience, and thank you also for all these rich questions that I'm receiving. I hope you enjoyed, and see you inshallah tomorrow for another session. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
يا دكتور علاء، يا علاء.
أمرني دكتور نحن على الببليك.
أنا عارف إحنا على الببليك. طب ندخل تاني على عشان نعمل فيدباك كده.
طيب حاضر. دحين خلي المهندس هيثم يعمل لنا رابط على طول، أرسل لك هو.
طيب
حاضر ثواني.